connecting through the Zoom line this time, but I think within the year we're coming up to Northern California, so we'll connect in person. But grateful to have you on Dad Awesome today, and I thought it'd be fun to start because I know so many of your friends, I know so many people who have been impacted by your work. If you could just take us into tell us about your family, how many kids, grandkids, and just something that brought you a little extra joy in the dad life in the past month or two.
Um, well, like everybody, I got married. I got married back in 1984. Back in the 1900s, I got married. I have three kids. I have two boys, and my daughter's my oldest, Brittany, Levi, and Taylor. They are all in their 30s now. So how old do you have to be to have children in your 30s? I'm grandfather of three. My my daughter and her husband Ben, uh, and their three kids, and Sherry and I, we all live together. And we have a little patch of land in Northern California, and we raise chickens and goats and a livestock guardian dog, and we've had pigs and lambs, and so it's super desirable. I think it's I watched a few episodes of Yellowstone, and I somewhere in there they said all the billionaires want to be cowboys. And I'm like, I bet that's true. I mean, if you could do whatever you wanted, you would want to work outside with your tractor, being dirty and taking care of stuff. So super fun stuff. And then in that process, I used to be a meat cutter. I was, a butcher, so that's all really familiar to me. And then I got into social work and then ministry, and traveled to 35 countries around the world. You know, this guy from Weaverville, California, never thought any of this would happen. I grew up not knowing what a passport was. And now here we are, authored 9 books, and really just dialing in, equipping leaders and men and women for whole, healthy families that we actually believe are going to save the world.
Well, I'm thankful that you've been guided to that pursuit and that I get to benefit from. In fact, in the preparation for this conversation, Danny, over the last few days, I like to just binge before conversation of just like as much as I can learn. And of course, I've learned from you before that, but as I was walking up from my RV to this little farmhouse that I'm recording from in Texas today, which speaking of kind of being on a farm or ranch, I feel that. In fact, we're in a horse pasture, the RV right now. So the horses in the middle of the night were right outside our window of the
Yeah,
RV.
yeah.
But as I was walking up, I thought to myself, hey, if somehow the internet goes down or somehow we don't have the conversation today, I already just took so many from just on YouTube, on your podcast, through your books, just like so many deposits have already been made into my heart. I'm going to link in the show notes several of those research, like the things that I found, like start here. This will be helpful for the dads listening. So I just want to say thank you to start with, even if this
Awesome.
conversation didn't happen. Thank you. And this is talking about some of these themes we're gonna chat about today are like center of God is doing work in this area of continuing to learn to love well, to forgive well, to draw closer to my wife and my girls and their hearts and how I approach discipline. So many of these topics. But I thought it would be fun because I studied 2 verses early this morning in the RV, 1 Timothy 1, verses 6 and 7. I just kind of dialed in on these 2 verses, which I know inform and guide much of the work that you do. But I'll read it in the Passion Translation, the paraphrase, and I'd love for you to riff on anything that just stokes your heart, and you're like, oh, I want to talk about this for dad. So here I'll read it briefly.
Great.
It says, this is verse 6 and 7 of 1 Timothy 1. I'm writing to encourage you to fan into a flame and rekindle the fire of the spiritual gift God imparted to you when I laid my hands upon you. For God will never give you the spirit of fear, but the Holy Spirit who gives you mighty power, love, and self-control. What kind of jumped into your heart there that you'd want to talk to us dads about from those verses?
Oh, I probably just the power that is in self-control. I mean, when we nail that, when a man nails that he basically has one job, you basically have one job, tell yourself what to do and do it. If you will just do what you tell yourself to do, and then point yourself at a smart target, you are going to rock life.
That's amazing.
I mean,
It's so simple.
that's just it. I mean, if I could just tighten that verse down to you have the mind of Christ, because many translations say a sound mind, you know, and it's literally the mind of Christ. You have been given the mind of Christ. You have that ability. Self-control is not saying no to porn, no to alcohol, no to pot, no to lust, no to, that's not self-control. Self-control is pick a target and say yes with all your heart. Just say yes with all your heart, and you've automatically said no to the stupid stuff because you have lined yourself up with the genius stuff.
Yes. Yes, and that those last three things the verse lands on, which you talking about the last one, self-control. I reframe it to mighty power, mighty love, mighty self-control in that translation of just like we can be amped up to more than kind of the expectation, the norm that we would hope for. And I know that kind of being powerful is something that you are like, we can step into being powerful leaders, powerful dads. Would you kind of unpack a little further what you mean when you talk about kind of inviting someone to live in power?
Well, it would be exactly what I just said, in that you have the power to make choices. You know, you've been empowered
Mhm.
with to resist what others can't, to choose what others don't value, to um, to nurture things that others don't see. I mean, you have the power by the Spirit of God to want to please God, to want to tend to your heart connection with the Father. You know, other people just don't even want it. That's what's wrong with the world. The world is sliding into the toilet because they have zero awareness of their connection with the Father and how powerful and meaningful that is. And when you have nothing like that to protect, all you protect is yourself. And you live a constant state of self-preservation.
Yep. Yep. Survival mode. And the world, would you say, when you say kind of sliding into the toilet, isolation is one of the directions of that, like the world slides that direction versus togetherness?
Absolutely. Proverbs 18:1 says, you know, a man who isolates himself, seeks his own desires, and rages against wise counsel and judgment. So the trap of the enemy for men in particular is isolation, because now you become master and ruler of reality. And that is the fast track to deception. And that's exactly the kingdom where the devil rules, is deception. So once you leave the kingdom reality that has a king, and then you become the king, and now you too are an opponent of God.
We don't want to be opposing God.
Man, what a dumb idea, right? That is just what were you thinking? Oh, you didn't see it. Okay, well, stop.
So living together with your wife, your daughter, your son-in-law, your three grandkids, like that to me is not normal. Although I want that. I
Depends on
admire
what
it.
country you live in, right?
Well, exactly, exactly. So I'd love for you to like, whose idea was it, and what have you learned in this journey? How long have you guys been living together? Like, yeah, tell us more about that.
Um, we about 9 years ago. So Ben and Britt have been married almost 20 years. They got married at 18 and 19, you know. So they are old young people.
Yeah.
I have a 17-year-old granddaughter, and yeah, it's great. About 9 years ago, when we left Reading and Bethel, we came down with Jesus Culture to help Banning, Leapshire, Banning and CJ start a church. So uh, it took us about a year to make the transition just because of the disruption that it was causing at Bethel. And my daughter and son-in-law did not want to come. They were both employed at Bethel and they were going to stay there and raise their family in Reading. But by the end of the year, um, they had changed their mind and they said, we want to go with you. So we all came down together and decided to get one house and have since moved 3 times together. And now we bought a house together and we live on a little farm, and it's awesome. The grandkids work the farm, they do 4-H, they they're just cutting wood, and it's super fun to have a place for your kids to learn how to be responsible and work hard, and something to take their face out of the screen.
Yeah, the purchasing the house together though, you tested it maybe with some rental houses or those other homes, but then I feel like it gives you a spot where you've locked yourself in as family to we're going to work through disagreements, we're going to work through, and it just kind of back to that self control. I feel like, and back to the theme of isolation we talked about. Families, multi-generational families living together and purchasing property together, I feel like is rare because of selfishness, right? And maybe unhealed areas of just like this comes up. How would you coach me and the other dads around like the benefits and the like? This is real. You're going to have to step into real, deeper relationships here and press through hard things.
Well, in a sense, it's like marriage, right? It's like a covenant of, like we've not decided to live together for the rest of our lives, but it's working fantastic and we love it. And, our grandchildren's normal is Mimi and Papa are on the other side of that door. Um, so it is something that we also work together. We're also in the ministry together. So I mean, it's pretty much like there's no place to hide if we have a conflict or anything like that. So in that way, it's very much like marriage. We work it out. We communicate. We strategize. We in particular, Sherry and I have hosted a partnership of many of their dreams, many of the things they want to see happen. We're living the end of our life to leave an inheritance for our children's children, so that my grandchildren have a leg up when they start. So I think as a young man, I thought a lot about how responsible I was for my kids, my family. As an older man, I think primarily about the responsibility I have for my grandchildren's success.
Yes.
And there's a partnership, a generational partnership that I want my kids to feel that propels them, because there is that whole hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. There is that truth to that, meaning that my life sucked and I had a ton of obstacles to sort. As a result, I have a resolve to never let that touch my kids, right?
Yes.
Well, as a result, they could be really soft.
They could.
They could be really underdeveloped and didn't work that out. So I think part of our work really is living together and sorting things out And they have hard work in other ways than I had hard work, but they still have hard work. And then how do I pass that on to my grandchildren? Well, farm life is a great childhood.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a gift for sure. I'm hearing, maybe it's being picked up on the mic, cows right through the window here in the front yard mooing today. This is perfect for talking about
We
farm
get
life.
a moo amen out there.
That's right. It's happening. Family culture. So in your case, you kind of a blend, like you need to kind of create a co-family culture that spans generations. But how would you just encourage the RV family culture for my family and beyond, other dads to think intentionally about the culture that we're creating?
It's like anything, it begins with giving it thought, consideration. Like just the idea of having uh, a family culture begins to generate the questions, where does it come from? How do you end up with a family culture? Well, you make agreements, and you either make agreements invisibly or intentionally. Everybody's got one. Everybody has a family culture. Uh, Satan has a family culture, if you will. So it's not like you only have one if you design it. Like, oh no. It's the areas that you and your wife in particular agree how we will uh, measure respect, measure responsibility, measure connection. These things you had better figure out how high is that value that you'll practice with each other in your marriage, because that is your family's culture. So if you give yourself permission to lower respect or responsibility or connection for these reasons, please understand that is your family's culture, and your kids will return the favor.
Yeah. The
And
stakes are,
so,
yeah, it's clear we're exporting all the time.
we're creating the temperature of the water everybody swims in.
Mhm.
And it's shocking when somebody throws a bucket of cold water in your face, and you go, "Where'd you get that bucket of cold water?" And they say, "I got it out of our pond."
Mhm.
Like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it takes a while to heat that water back up again once you let it go cold.
Yes. Now, I know one of the kind of foundational areas that you've written about is, and this even comes back to those couple verses that we read, but using control behavior as the focus versus relationship, and just this like choice that we make as parents. Am I going to work towards outcomes of their behavior or connection with their heart?
Mhm.
I'm probably setting it up. Yeah, really, really soft setup. But can you take us into the heart of, and I believe it ties with culture directly, of how are we choosing to say this is the bottom line for how we operate as a family?
Yeah, well, mostly the backstory on what you're describing is written in the book I wrote, Loving Our Kids on Purpose. It's in Culture of Honor as well, and it's at a higher level in Unpunishable.
Yes.
But the application in the family is really an attempt to help us to see how our Father parents us as sons and daughters. He is not screaming in my face. He's not grabbing me by the shirt and throwing me up against the wall. He's not kicking me in the butt because he's pissed. He's not, intimidating me into submission. The church will gladly intimidate the world into submission and, scare everybody onto the bus. But that's not my Father. That's the spirit of fear. And when the most used tool in my toolbox as a parent is some form of intimidation or the threat of punishment, then I have created a culture in my home that does not resemble heaven. It does not, I pray your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, in my home as it is in heaven. So that book is really attempting to show us that my Father is much more concerned about my heart connection to him than he is controlling me.
Yes.
And that kind of blows our mind and takes us out of a skill set, because most of us really only understand how to try to control our children. And we've actually heard it from other people. Like, you need to control your child. Somebody needs to control that child. And you're like, well, good luck. I can't find the remote. I lost the remote in the couch somewhere. We don't know where the remote on this child went. So there'll be no controlling other human beings. You don't control your wife, you don't control your children, you don't control your adult children, this is why learning to control yourself is so important, because if you don't learn to control yourself, you are out of control.
Yeah.
And the false sense of control, it comes from orchestrating and intimidating, manipulating, dominating other people. So it's a retooling, if you will, learning how to communicate in such a way that you are leading yourself and you are stewarding consequences for choices, but you realize the whole time, I do not control you. You'd better learn to control yourself.